Let's go.
That was the fake beer opening.
We don't have any beer tonight.
We don't have any beer. Funny story. I went to get us a beer on the way here, right?
Oh, Lord.
Stopped at the liquor store, walked in, picked out a nice beer that looked really good. It's brand new. I hadn't seen it before. Got all excited. Walk up to the counter, put it on the counter. She rings it up. Hand her my ID. It declines because I forgot my ID expired on my birthday.
Ah, that sucks.
So I had to walk out with no beer. I had to do the walk of shame out of the liquor store.
Man, that's a...
I renewed it online, but it says it takes like 4 to 6 weeks to get to me. And I keep forgetting it expired. I just walk up and I'm like, hey, here to buy alcohol like an adult. So we have no beer, and it's kind of my fault.
Yeah, I'm drinking a big K Cola.
K Cola.
It's a step up from RC Cola.
But it's a huge step down from like Coca-Cola.
Oh, yeah. It's just, it's cut with something else, you know?
Yeah. It's probably cut with anthrax.
Oh, God.
Well, welcome to the Abyss, everybody.
So I watched a new scary movie.
Oh?
And it was okay. It was called Countdown.
Never heard of it.
It's like, those scary movies that are trying to keep up with the times. It was about an app that you would download, and it would tell you, like, when you were going to die. But if you tried
like a date, or is like give you a countdown?
Oh, yeah, like to the second.
Oh.
But if you knew that you were going to die and, like, you try to deviate from the path, a demon comes and just murders your ass afterwards.
Wow.
Or actually kills you, like, at the second of your countdown. Anyways, so I got the app. I was like, what the hell, you know? Good movie. I mean, it was all right. And apparently I'm going to die in 46 years. So.
That's still a long time.
Yeah, at least I'll get some Social Security, you know, flip off a few people on my way out, and, yeah, then blackness.
I think you flipped off a couple people already.
Yeah, not enough.
So what would you do, though, like, if you actually had an app that told you? Like, if you could verify 100% that you... Would you, like, actually look at it?
Yeah, why not?
You'd do it?
Yeah.
I'd be too afraid, man.
Yeah, you'd do it. Everyone would.
I'm not saying I wouldn't do it, but I'd be afraid. Because, like, what if you did it and it's like, you have 10 hours? Like, that would be the scariest 10 hours of your life.
No, you know,
I'd have to do something super illegal.
Yeah, it might be freeing, you know.
Freeing?
Yeah.
You had, like, a good...
Do whatever you want for 10 hours.
You had a good day with your family. You're like, I'm going to check the app now. 10 hours. Oh, okay. Well, I'm going to go rob a bank real quick.
Is
just
that
to
what
get the
you
thrill.
would do? Rob a bank?
I don't know what I would do with 10 hours,
Actually shoot someone on your way out, a whole family?
No, I wouldn't shoot a whole family.
No!
Commit, like, the worst crime possible. No. I don't know what I'd do, man. That's scary. With 46 years, you got a lot of things you can do. That's your whole life you've already lived, and then a little bit more.
Yep, I'm fine. Download the app. If you're going to die in a couple of minutes, let me know.
Yeah, send it into the Abyss, your countdown timers. I'm curious. And hopefully it's not true.
Yeah.
But we are going back to good old Reddit. And the thread tonight is, what's some paranormal activity that you experienced, Reddit?
Oh, I'm excited, man. I'm going to say, you know, we did all that freaky shit on Halloween. Check out the Halloween episode if you haven't already. But, yeah, no freaky shit has happened here. Not at all. Sleep like a baby. I sleep in the room that we had the Ouija board out, the ghost rods, and the spirit box.
So this starts with JP. My brother's story that was validated nearly 2 decades after it happened. My brother Mark was 12 years old when my grandfather in Glasgow, Scotland, had taken ill and wasn't expected to survive. My parents took the next available flight to Scotland and had to leave us kids behind in Chicago. I was too young at the time to understand what was happening, but Mark had figured out that our Grandpa Joe was dying. Mark was very upset by the news and was heartbroken that he couldn't go see our grandpa one last time. I was too young to have had the privilege of knowing Grandpa Joe, but from the stories I have heard, he was a very loving man who adored his grandchildren. A few days after my parents left, Mark went into the basement of our house to grab clothes from the drying machine. When he reached the bottom of the stairs, he froze. About 30 feet away from the foot of the stairs, there is a doorway to a utility room in the basement. Just as Mark reached the bottom of the stairs, he saw a figure step into view. It was Grandpa Joe. He was smiling at Mark and holding a white box. He didn't say anything, but he smiled and then walked past the doorway and was gone. My brother ran back upstairs in hysterics, telling our babysitter that he had seen our grandfather and needed to talk to my parents. The babysitter reluctantly let my brother call Glasgow, and when he reached my parents, he told them the story. They tried to soothe him and tell him that everything was okay, that his imagination was playing tricks on him because he was worried about Grandpa Joe. Grandpa Joe had passed away while my parents were on their flight heading to Glasgow, and my parents didn't have the heart to tell Mark the sad news over the phone. Fast forward 20 years later, my brother and I are visiting my mom in Florida. One night we stayed up late talking about family, and eventually the conversation turned to our Grandpa Joe. After reminiscing about our grandpa and his good nature, my brother said to my mom, "You and Dad never believed me when I told you that I saw Grandpa in the basement." My mom looked puzzled and asked Mark, "When did you see Grandpa Joe in the basement?" My mom had remembered talking to Mark the morning that her and my dad arrived in Scotland, but she hadn't remembered the specifics of Mark's story. Mark retold the story, but this time when it was over, my mom was speechless. After a few moments, she broke the silence and asked Mark to describe the box that Grandpa Joe was holding. Mark said that it looked like a white rectangular box that was about 3 feet long and had a width and height of about 1.5 feet. Something about his description of the box made my mom get tears in her eyes. She collected herself and then told us both, for the first time, that one of our aunts had a stillborn baby at almost the same time that my grandpa passed away. The child and Grandpa Joe were buried in the same grave, and the child was buried in a small white coffin. Evidence corroborating a paranormal experience is introduced 20 years after the experience occurred.
Wow, that was a good one. That gave me chills.
That's wild. Sad, but wild.
Also heartwarming at the same time. All right, this one is from Deleted.
Hey.
Well, the one that always stuck out to me was a few years ago. I woke up in the middle of the night from a dream where I heard someone screaming bloody murder. So I sit up in my bed, and I'm just sitting there when all of a sudden, it's the same bloody murder scream as before. It's coming from my old sister's room right down the hall. So I jump up out of bed and run to my door. As I'm almost to it, it slams shut in my face. I rip it open after pissing myself to see an empty, dark hallway. I flip on the light on the wall, and it's empty. I run into my sister's room and ask her what the hell she's screaming for, and she says that she woke up to her dog with its head up growling at the hallway through her open door. So she stares out into the hall for a minute when she sees something dark and big crawling down the hall on all fours towards my room.
Nope.
Jesus.
It's a big nope from me.
So she screams once, and it stops and looks at her. She screams again, and that's when I hopped up. According to her, it ran towards my room, and she heard my door slam. So my folks and I all go around searching the house for open doors, windows, whatever, and we don't find anything. Jeez, man. My God. These are good stories so far.
Yeah, I don't know. I've said it once. I'll say it again. The sound and sight of something running at you is forever one of the scariest things.
Or just crawling at a high speed.
On all fours.
Backwards.
Okay, this one's from Cuccialo. Before each of my cousins were born, my pregnant aunts would ask my grandpa what the sex of the baby would be. He was right each time, for at least all 8 of my older cousins and brother. When my mom was pregnant with me, she asked him if I would be a boy or a girl. He said, "Well, I don't know. I can't see that far." He died a month before I was born. Damn.
Huh. All right, this is another one from Deleted. So I've got my nephew out for the summer 1 year, and he's out front playing with my mom and dad out on the front lawn, leaving me alone inside. I'm walking from the kitchen out to the front door to go join everyone. So as I'm walking by outstairs, that's what it says. No, hang on. So as I'm walking by outstairs, I kind of just stopped because I had a weird feeling, like someone's watching me type of deal. You know, I used to get those a lot when I was a kid. So I stop and I'm looking up towards the top of the stairs, and it's pitch black up there. Mind, it's the middle of the day. Anyway, so I'm looking up there, and all of a sudden, I hear this high-pitched baby scream that goes from a low scream to a much higher tone.
No!
And it sounds like it's coming from the top of the stairs. I nope the fuck out of my own home and go outside to tell my folks. They said they heard it too, and they thought it was me fucking around. Definitely one of the creepier ones.
This comes from Shadow Skeet. When I was young, I used to stay in my great-grandmother's house overnight during the summer. This was an old southern house that had been around since World War I. So one night, I'm in bed trying to get some sleep. It's summer, and it's balls hot in a house where there's no AC built in. Balls hot. I don't know if I've ever heard that before. How hot is it? Balls hot.
Balls hot.
When I see a woman walk through my door, my closed door. She was in a white dress or nightgown and moved around the room as if she was getting ready for the day. I watched for what seemed like forever, then suddenly she stops mid-step and slowly turns my direction. At this point, I'm scared shitless and think I'm going to die. She finally sees me. I look at her face, then I look into her eyes, and as soon as I did that, I blanked out. When I came to, I'm on the patio and the sun is rising, and I have no clue how I managed to get there. I stayed on the patio. I wasn't going back into the room until my great-grandmother woke up and began breakfast. While eating breakfast, I tell my great-grandmother that I saw a ghost. She said, "Baby, what this ghost look like?" I described it to her, and she looks at me and says, "Oh, that's just your Aunt so-and-so." My response, "What?" Later that day, she gets an old photo album out and shows me a picture of my dead aunt that died in the house way before I was born, along with a few other dead family members. Then went on about how she sees them from time to time. Never spent the night ever again, and I never went into that room ever again. Huh.
Creepy. These are good stories so far. This one is from Deleted. This one happened back when we lived in a rental house. 2-story layout. The memory is a little fuzzy. I woke up one night after a weird dream. So I'm laying there, trying to fall back asleep when I feel this pressure pushing down on me. I just can't move. It's just like in a dream, but I'm wide awake now. I tilted my head up and I can see this dark figure looming over me from the foot of my bed. I let out a loud scream/yell, and it just stands there kind of staring at me. I yell again, and that's when the hall light flips on. All of a sudden, the weight is gone and the figure darts out the door. My dad rushes in and asks me if I just had someone in my room. As I'm telling him what happened, there's this loud as hell bang from downstairs. I go with him and we search the house to find the back door that leads to the kitchen is wide open. Normally, all the doors in the house are locked. So we end up calling the police and filing a report and all. I haven't heard anything back since then, but yeah, weird shit.
This one comes from Everybody Loves Anal. When I was 11 years old one summer, I took dance classes at a community center 2 blocks from my house. Since it was so close, my mom would just let me ride over to the center on my Razor scooter. Oh, Razor scooters were the best.
Yeah, they were cool.
On the way to my second class, I had sworn I saw a kid who was riding an extremely retro bike. Definitely not a model I had seen at the time in '99. When I blinked, he was gone. So I was absolutely convinced I was just seeing things. My mind changed when this happened 6 to 7 more times over the next 4 weeks, and the kid would ride at the exact same time as me, but only appear for mere seconds and weirdly just disappear. Finally, on the day of my last session, I shouted across the street, "Please, leave me alone." It never happened again, and I've never had a paranormal experience after that. But if by chance spirits exist, I still feel bad I yelled at one. It's like some poor kid who just found someone else that can see him, and he just, "Leave me alone!" Right?
Yeah, it reminds me of when I was a kid. I'd be laying in my room, and then Jesus would appear on the wall. He would talk to me, and I eventually just told him to go away. This one is from Red Jaguar Dude.
Oh.
Okay, this is a really long-winded story, and it'll probably not be seen by many, but here it goes. It's actually going to be on a podcast.
It's going to be heard by a few.
Yeah, like 10. This was back in 2006 when I worked at my pretzel store that rhymes with candy cans in the local mall. This is during the dead afternoon, days of the summer. Usually there would be one person. At this time, I am the one person. The day was going by pretty slow, and with no windows, time would often stand still. Cameras made it hard for us to text people and slack off. Regardless, at some unknown time, a family of 3, a mother, a daughter, and a young son, stop some distance from the counter and stare at me and the pretzels. I would not have thought it to be odd except for how they were dressed. They looked like they came straight out of the 1950s. The son was much younger and was in a 1950s style clothing as well. I'm thinking how weird this could possibly be, but then realized that right upstairs there was a professional photography place, so they were probably dressed up for some old-timey photos. It was not until the little boy came up to the counter and asked for a pretzel. I told him the price, $2.66, and he handed me a $1 bill. I motioned to the mother that the pretzel cost $2.66, and he was $1.66 short. She looked at me like I told her the pretzel cost $10. I mean, I understand that 266 was high for a pretzel, but she looked at me as if I wanted her to fork over her life savings. The little boy, not talking, hands me the dollar. I take a hard stare at it and realize it's a silver certificate, series 1957. And this dollar bill did not look like it was almost half a century old. It had normal wear and tear, like a series 2003 bill had at the time, so he's saying a brand new bill. It wasn't crisp, but it was still very much usable, and a bank would probably use it for further transactions. At this point, I realized that nobody else really crossed their paths the entire time, and the entertainment music store next door was pretty dead, even for a midsummer afternoon, while pedestrian traffic just seemed to be non-existent. I hand the dollar back to the boy, and he walks away with his mother and sister. About 10 seconds later, pedestrian traffic walked through the area of the store. TLDR, time-traveling family.
This is what, like 9 years ago?
It came out 9 years
ago.
ago.
$8
2013. Now. Yeah, someone wrote, "Man, I never thought about traveling to the future and being poor." Oh, it says, "Okay, one Coke. That'll be 15 grand." Like, Jesus.
Damn. Okay, this one is from Slib is Sandwich. When my sister was young, maybe about 3, she used to stare at walls and random stuff in the house and say, "You're a bad man. A bad, bad man." That's freaky. She was genuinely afraid and would wake up with night terrors a lot. In my grandparents' house, my family had seen lots of weird things happen. When my mom was pregnant with me, she swore she saw her grandmother, who told her she wanted to see her have a child before she died. When I was a baby, both my parents left me in the room alone, and my father came back to see her standing over the crib. They used to hear noises, which they described as karate noises.
Karate from the garage.
Coming from what was known as the middle room. Like, what is a karate noise?
We called it the dojo room.
Hi-ya! The middle room was the house's first floor, though my grandparents always lived in the basement, and anyone else living in the house always lived in the rooms on the second floor. The middle room as mostly fancy and just for show. One day, one of my uncles decided to sneak into the middle room without turning on the lights and hide behind the couch. Supposedly, he saw 2 figures wrestling.
Was this like a dojo?
It might have been.
Or like a sex dungeon?
It probably both. It was a dojo sex dungeon. Lots of things happened. I saw them wrestling, but they were naked.
Yeah.
Later, they found out that the previous owners were 2 lesbian women who were in fact wrestlers. Oh, well, damn. It was a dojo. A sex dojo.
Yep, told you.
One of my personal favorites. My mom and aunt were looking through pictures one day. They found a picture of my christening or baptism or whatever. They noticed a woman in the back that looked exactly like their grandmother who was dead. No one remembered her being there, but later the picture was never found again. My cousin was at the house staying with my father and I, just the 3 of us. My cousin and I got into a fight, so my dad sent him to sit in the basement where my grandparents lived. That's a hell of a punishment. Hey, you guys are fighting. You go sit in the basement by yourself. He said all the drawers and cabinets kept opening and shutting. He was terrified and ran to the bedroom and hid under the covers. My aunt was once babysitting a lot of her nieces and nephews. A lot of her nieces and like the whole group of them. They ran off to the other parts of the house and hid, but later came back scared, said they saw a man. My aunt separated them and got their stories, which were eerily the exact same story. She thought by separating them they would slip up and it would show they were lying. There are a lot more creepy occurrences, but I may as well have at least one that has me not as an infant. My brother and I were sitting on our bed back when we were young enough to share a room and a bed, happily playing Nintendo 64 late at night alone in the house during the summer. It was a 2-family house, and one of our aunts lived upstairs with her kids and was in charge of watching over us. But my brother and I were alone in our part of the house with all the doors and windows locked. While we were playing, we suddenly had to stop because we saw a pillow float up and throw itself across the room. We still have no explanation for it.
All right, this one is from Beyond the Dark Sun. I was near Bennington, Vermont, and my friends and I stopped at the cemetery at night. We were like 18 and just out for a drive trying to have a good time. We were walking around the cemetery, laughing, etc., when all of a sudden, I just stopped in my tracks because I saw something behind a tree. A white thing. Not necessarily a person, but I felt like it was a girl. I remember I was eating an apple and suddenly became nauseous and dropped it on the ground. One of my friends had the same feeling, and we were like, let's get out of here, and drove away in silence. The next day, we went back and saw a gravestone leaning against a tree. It was an old one from the 1800s. Also, it was for a teenage girl with my name.
No one has the same name.
I'll never forget that. Really creepy. Another one, also in Vermont, I was at the Bennington College Music Building, which is supposedly haunted. I didn't believe in any of that back then. I was on the 3rd floor walking past some rooms that weren't used for anything. One had an old bed in it. I noticed the bed had an imprint in it, and I just assumed it was an old mattress. A few minutes later, when I walked back past it again, the mattress was flat. I was a bit freaked out. Ha ha.
This one comes from Tasty Baby Soup. It's disgusting.
Yeah,
Part of my high school was sealed off for years. During my junior year, they opened it up to change out the 90-year-old windows and put in more energy-efficient ones. During theater practice one night, myself and 3 of my friends snuck up to take a peek at the old section since it was supposed to be haunted. While the girl in our group was digging through old papers in one of the rooms, we all ran across the hall and hid inside another room. She came running out in a panic, and we could hear her screaming our names and calling us assholes. As we were trying not to laugh, we heard giggling coming from the room next to us, right on the other side of the goddamn wall. My one friend, who is a big, tough, thuggish type, screams the most high-pitched scream I've ever heard and runs out with us following right behind him. The kicker? The old part of the building used to be an all-girls orphanage back in the 1900s. I guess the kids liked our prank and couldn't contain themselves.
damn. All right, this one is from Scriblets. When I was a kid, I had a dream where I saw my big brothers being dragged down the stairs by the gray aliens with the big black eyes. Our rooms were side by side, and I could see it happening out the door. They had him wrapped in a sheet with his head sticking out. In the morning, my brother said he had a dream he was being dragged down the stairs by aliens with big black eyes. True story.
This comes from EMAC86. Growing up, there was always late-night sounds from the kitchen, cupboards opening and closing, footsteps and such. The way the kitchen is laid out, there is a window facing west, south, east, and the door is on the western side. What? The bathroom is eastern of the kitchen, so as you walk out of the bathroom, you can see in the eastern window to the kitchen. Okay. As a teenager, I started to notice someone standing at the southern window, but as I passed the door, they would always disappear. It definitely was not a shadow, as you could see that they were looking south with their hands behind their back. One day when I was about 14 or 15, I said to my best friend, who stays the night most weekends, "You are going to think I'm crazy, but I think my house is haunted." She responded with, Is it the person in the kitchen that looks out the window?"
Creepy, man.
That's it. It's an M. Night Shyamalan.
Why'd they have to end there? This one is from Ninja Jandal. A little while after my mother passed, I was staying at my neighbor's house and looked out the window to see her standing on the lawn. White robe, transcendent glow, not wings per se, but illumination where you'd expect to see them, and looking so healthy for the first time since the cancer took her over 5 years before. Naturally, 7-year-old me freaked the fuck out and ran outside. She was gone, but the patch where she had been standing was warm on what was a chilly autumn night. Everyone said I was imagining things. Learn not to mention it.
This one comes from Soupy Norman. Every summer, as a wee lad, I'd spend a week or two with my granny in her isolated cottage in the Wicklow Mountains in Ireland. Oh, it is Ireland. Every summer as a wee lad.
Shar.
I've been all over the world, and it's still my favorite place. This cottage is like 100 years old. My granny's mother and her mother lived there and died in this house, and I will admit, as much as I loved it there, it was a scary place to be at night. It didn't help that the wiring was old and the lights didn't shine at their full brightness, so that gave the inside a dull, menacing look and feel. One of the days I was over with friends. They lived 7 miles away, and they always dropped me home at night. This one night they dropped me home, and my gran was gone to the pub with her sister. She'd left a note out. I think it was about 11 p.m. at this stage, but country pubs in Ireland stayed open till like 2 or 3 a.m. I was kind of okay for a while. I had the TV on, which is always comforting, but back then there was closed down where the TV station went off the air for the night at about 12:30 a.m. Shit started happening soon after that. I was kind of at a loss at what I should do. I was way too scared to sleep, but the absolute silence was driving me nuts. There were literally no sounds, for a while anyway. I was about 13 or 14 at the time, so my mind was racing as it was. About 1 a.m., I heard what I thought was a car approaching way in the distance. As I mentioned, it is so isolated and quiet, you can hear a car approaching from 1 or 2 miles away. At that moment, I figured it was my gran on the way back, and I instantly relaxed. But as soon as I did, I realized that the noise was actually a little different, and it kind of felt closer. It was sort of a drone sound, like a really low hum with a vibration to it. The second I realized it wasn't a car, I almost shit my pants. Also, the fight or flight response was invoked. I opted for the latter. I ran out the front door and out past the front yard onto the road. I had that dread feeling and had a tangible sense that something was following me out of the house. I didn't look back, just kept jogging towards the sole streetlight about 70 yards from the house. Once I got there, I did feel better, so I looked over my shoulder and nothing was there but blackness, but I didn't feel scared anymore. That dread was gone. I stayed there for about an hour until I saw a car coming, and then I hovered outside the front gate until my gran pulled up like I was outside to greet her. All was okay once I went back in. No idea what the hell happened, but it definitely was not normal.
Yeah, that's creepy. I don't even know why.
Well, it's like, you know those quiet rooms where there's like no sounds at all and you like lose your mind? Something about the quiet. Functioning.
This one is from Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. What the fuck, man? Weirdest by far. August of 2004, we ventured to a pretty well-known location in Pennsylvania, Pennhurst State School. The school oozes pure malevolence from the second you set foot on the property. The amount of human suffering that occurred upon the grounds is unimaginable. You could literally feel the agony that the people who were condemned to the asylum's hellish conditions had to endure. The place opened in 1908 and acted as a place where people would dump the mentally challenged, deformed, insane, or somehow otherwise deemed unfit for society, and then forget about them. By the mid-1960s, Pennhurst had been open for 50 years. It housed 2,791 people, most of them children, which was about 900 more than the administration thought the building could comfortably accommodate. It was overcrowded, filthy, and severely understaffed. By the 1980s, the overcrowding, lack of funds, inadequate staffing, and decades of abuse and neglect accusations caught up with the operation, and in 1987, Pennhurst closed its doors for good. The place is made up of several different buildings situated on a massive plot of land. The buildings at the time I was there were still littered with the remnants of the past. Personal possessions still in a lot of the rooms, old gurneys here and there, beds, strange medical devices, and an old dental chair adorned with the restraints that they used to pull the teeth of patients who would bite, just to name a few of the oddities.
That has got to be a really, really bad energy place.
Yeah, well, you bet Julie, we got to take out all your teeth. I cannot convey via words the overall vibe and feeling of sadness and pain the place gives off. The building we were in at the time of the incident I am about to explain is named the Mayflower Building. We had been inside for just about an hour or so, checking out rooms and speculating about this or that. Our EMF detector had a pretty dead reading as we made our way around the bowels of the building. Suddenly, the EMF spiked like crazy, and simultaneously, all flashlights and cameras died, despite having fresh batteries in each. So, there we were, fumbling in complete and total darkness, while in the depths of a long-abandoned mental institution, trying to figure out what happened and get batteries into the flashlights so we could see, when a low, gurgling growl erupted from one side of the room. Well, we all immediately froze, and our chatter went totally silent as we listened to this thing gurgling and growling at us from within the darkness. After a few moments, and although panic-stricken, I was able to compose myself long enough to get some batteries in my flashlight and turn it on, and immediately flooded the area the sound was coming from with light. What we saw was a figure, thin and bony, ribs protruding, kinda hunched over, standing roughly 6 feet in height, pale, naked, bald, twisted and deformed, with overly long gangly arms hanging by its side. It looked straight at us with a sickened skeletal-like face, black hollows where there should be eyes, and then it vanished with a loud pop and in a poof of what looked like black milky smoke that dissipated within seconds through a solid wall in a swirling pattern. The feeling I got from it was suffering and hatred. We were both beyond terrified and quickly exited the building with much haste. A lot of hyperactive yammering occurred between us on the car ride home about what we had just seen. To me, it looked like a severely malnourished, mistreated, and neglected patient. Its skeletal face, deformed body, and black hollows for eyes is something I will never be able to get out of my head. It took weeks for me to even be able to shake the feeling of despair and suffering the place gives off. Penhurst is a place that once visited will leave you as a different person than when you went in, and will stick with you for the rest of your life.
God damn.
Jesus,
I wouldn't
man.
want to see that thing anywhere. This one comes from Gamilo6. I live in my uncle's old house with my brother. He committed suicide pretty much where I'm sitting at this very moment about 6 years ago. I have been living here since it happened and have seen some very strange and unexplainable shit. Lights turning on and off, doors opening and closing, footsteps down the hallway. The worst happened about a year ago when I was home alone, lying in bed with my dog. I hear footsteps in the living room, coming down the hallway towards my room, which of course was my uncle's old room. My dog hears them as well and starts staring out the door into the hallway. I ignore it until my phone lights up next to me on my nightstand, exactly like it does when you press one of the buttons. I was creeped the hell out and didn't sleep very well that night. I also saw a magazine get thrown about 2 feet off of the table in our kitchen, but I was very high on that occasion, so I'm not entirely sure that one was my Uncle Bill.
I was high out of my mind. Yeah, this one is an easy target. I have a few ghost stories, but it's mostly with my family members. When I was about 10 years old, my family moved to a house in a closer neighborhood to the schools and such. It was a pretty nice house. We renovated a lot of it because nothing had been done to it in years. This is when stuff started happening. My little brother was the first one to really experience anything. He was one to sleep in a dark room and have his door closed without being afraid. He was about 2 when we moved. When my parents would put him to sleep and they went to bed, he would run into their room, crawling out of his crib, and have a meltdown. My parents would ask what was wrong, and all he would say was that something chased him down the hallway. This happened all the time. One day,
I would just never go down the hallway again. Every time I go down the hallway, something just chases me.
I'm gonna get you. One day, he said that he didn't like the man in my parents' bedroom. My mom asked him, "Why are you afraid of Daddy?" And he would say, "No, this man," and move 2 fingers above the palms of his hand like something was hovering. To this day, I have to be with him when he sleeps or he'll stay up all night. My little sister had just as much fun. She used to hear it walk around her bed at night. She'd play her music all night because the footsteps crept around her bed. She had a battery-operated clock at the time she didn't use, and it would move by itself, without batteries, constantly when she was alone. She was by herself at the house one time with our dog. As she was walking down one of the hallways, a shadow ran past her, and our dog had a mental breakdown and barked and was sick. We came home to find her crying on the doorstep. My older brother had it worse. He would wake up in the middle of the night covered in scratches that were impossible for him to get by himself. It targeted him a lot and seemed to always try to hurt him. My experiences weren't bad, though. I used to hang out on the main floor and watch TV when I was by myself, and I could hear it walking around up in my parents' bedroom. It would pace back and forth. One day I stayed home sick from school and everyone else was out. I was just hanging out and all I heard from the basement was glass shattering. We were renovating at the time down there, so it was kind of chaotic. We replaced one of the windows and put the old one on the dresser laying down. When I went to investigate, it was pushed to the middle of the room. There's no way that this could have happened on its own. I was in tears too. My mom's shocking experience, though, was when I got home from a day at the beach and went to throw my bag on the couch. I turned into our living room, and the shadow was actually laying across the furniture. It was pure black. I ran for it and went to my neighbor's house. It was a mess there. My parents had their own troubles too. My dad woke up one night to the sound of a typewriter, which we do not own. My mom woke up once and was pinned down and unable to get up or alert anyone for a period of time. My dad would have dreams about an old man in their closet, and he would not sleep on the side of the bed closest to it. It was beyond creepy. My dog was constantly sick and would appear as if he was chased around our house at night by the signs of vomiting and everything. It didn't matter if it was 40 or negative 40 degrees Celsius. He would only come in at night when we forced him to. We're all moved now, and everything and nothing paranormal has been experienced. It's always in the back of my mind when I'm at someone's house who's been having the same troubles we faced.
This is written extravagantly.
We moved because of how bad things were getting. If any of you have troubles, be sure to tell someone. This is a serious thing that can happen to anyone.
This one is from SP5021. Basically, I live in a house that's been around since the 1960s. A couple years ago, after watching a documentary on model railways, I turned off the television, and in the reflection on the screen was a man sitting in a chair. The chair was a big one, and the man was wearing a plaid shirt, jeans, and a cowboy hat. He was white and was staring at me. Not necessarily menacingly, but it still creeped me out. At first I thought it was the screen lag or an illusion where you can still see parts of the screen after turning it off. But here's the thing. The man that was being interviewed was black and had overalls on. Not at all looking like the guy I saw. It freaked me out. Anyway, as I stared into the reflection of this man sitting in a chair that doesn't exist in my room, the area it would be in was occupied by my bed. I was sitting on it watching the TV. I decided to turn around and look. Nothing was there. And when I looked back at the television, he was gone. Left me unnerved. Anyway, I have yet to see this person again, but I've heard random occasional whispers in my house that sound like a man's voice, oddly occurring when I'm listening to music or playing video games. No, they're not part of the songs I listen to or the gameplay.
This is from Too Cute for a Condom.
Oh. Okay.
One of my best friends a few years back used to live next to a cemetery, and he would always say weird stuff would go on once in a while. So a bunch of us go out for a few minutes to pick up some food. We leave the doors locked and lights off. When we return, we notice right away, all the doors were wide open, fans and lights running as well. At first, we thought someone broke in. However, weird enough, nothing was taken or moved. 2 laptops, PS3, cash, etc., all there. A little creeped out, we proceed to eat our food when all of a sudden we feel and hear a big swish, and all the lights go out, and both the front and back doors violently swing wide open. Checking out the rest of his house, we see this white shadow at the door, then it vanished with another swish. At this point, we're all freaked the fuck out and go to our friend's house. My buddy moved a few weeks later after it happened to him again when he was by himself. I'm not a huge believer in ghosts, paranormal activity, but this for sure was very strange. Also, probably doesn't help that our buddy would always fuck around with the tombstones.
Yeah, that you don't do that. Asking for trouble. Okay, this comes from Brain Muffin. Oh yes, so my mother collects antiques. One of these antiques is this old 100-plus-year-old piano. When I was young, probably around the age of 10 or so, I remember my mom coming to me rather angry and asking if I had carved into the piano with a knife or something. She showed me the carvings of the piano, and they were really creepy symbols. I told her that I didn't do it. She said that they weren't there before and gave me the squinty eyes of disbelief. After assuring her that I didn't do it since I am not that creative, we assumed maybe she just didn't notice them or something. Well, a few months later, I noticed more carvings had appeared on the piano. I was afraid to tell her because I didn't want to reinforce her opinion of it being me. I honestly couldn't even carve these in the piano. The symbols were just too perfect. But another month later, again, there were even more. I finally showed her and swore I didn't do it. There hadn't been anyone coming into the house either. They eventually stopped appearing. To this day, I still think she believes it was me that did it. Maybe she hopes it was me secretly inside so that it doesn't freak her out as well. It's really creepy, but I think what would be creepier is if it really were me doing it while sleepwalking or something. That is the only explanation I can think of, but I don't have a history of sleepwalking. Thinking of walking down the stairs with a knife in my hand, zombie carving things gives me the chills. I have pictures of the carvings too. If anyone wants to see, I'll hunt them down. That's kind of wild, actually.
Yeah.
It's like Pazuzu's piano.
Pazuzu!
Like, go ahead and play Beethoven on this. I'll take your soul. All right, folks. Well, that wraps it up for this evening. Thank you again for joining us in another Reddit thread for our... I got nothing. I just kept going. I was like, I got fucking nothing.
What the hell? I didn't know what you said. And if you're watching us on YouTube and you like what you heard, just smash the hell out of that like button and subscribe thingy. And yeah, I think we're at 220-ish subs. So yeah, there's like a war with Spotify and YouTube right now. So please keep subbing. I want to see right now YouTube's up like 10 subs. So let's see who wins the sub wars.
Yeah, and keep talking about us if you're sharing us with your family and friends. If you like us, please do. It helps get us out there. Share us on Facebook, whatever you can do. We really appreciate it.
And as always, thank you for entering the abyss.
Until next time.